guys, in today's video, we are from Group 5, will explain our presentation about language typology. Before we start the presentation, let me introduce the members first. There are Yudantia Sekar Jati with the student number 10, Audrey Zatil Aqmar with the student number 25, Sabrina Yurizqa Ramadhanti with the student number 29, and me, myself, Marsha Citra Mauriska with the student number 30. Now, let's move to the presentation.
In general, language families, as conceived in the historical study of languages, should not be confused with the quite separate classification of languages by reference to their showing certain predominant features of grammatical structure. Such classification gives rise to what are called typological classes. So, what is linguistic typology? Linguistic typology or linguistic typology is a field of linguistics that studies about analysis, comparison, and classification of languages according to their common structural features and forms. Here, typology means the study of types or the classification of objects into types. Now, let's take a look in the usage of language typology. First, language typology is used to describe and explain the common properties and the structural diversity of the world's languages. Second, is used for a method of linguistic inquiry into the philosophy of language. Third, to explore cross-linguistic diversity and genetic relationships among languages. Fourth, application of typological insight to strengthen other related fields, such as intercultural and cross-cultural communication, translation, and language learning and teaching. And lastly, language typology is used for answering practical questions that language professionals, like translators, interpreters, and forensic linguists face on a day-to-day basis. Here, we have the example of language typology. In voiced and voiceless stops category, English, French, and Japanese are included in languages that have both voiced and voiceless stops in their phonemic inventories, while Mandarin Chinese, Korean, and Tahitian are languages that have only voiceless stops. For instance, if we establish a typology of languages according to whether they have nasal vowels in their phonemic inventory, English, Japanese, Mandarin Chinese, Korean, and Tahitian will fall into the category of languages that lack nasal vowels. In contrast, Standard French has 4 nasal vowels, along with Hindi, Tibetan, and Yoruba, a language widely spoken in Nigeria. They fall into the category of languages that have nasal vowels. Language typology categories have no necessary correspondence with groups of language that have descended from the same parent language. In fact, typological categories cut across language families. In the example just given, English, Japanese, and Tahitian are not related languages, yet they fall into the same language type with respect to the presence or absence of nasal vowels. On the other hand, French and English are related but fall into different types. There are 5 types of language typology. They are analytic, agglutinate-in, inflect-in, incorporate-in, and infixing. But we would like to explain second of it. They are analytic and agglutinate-in.
Analytic language. Analytic or isolating language is a language in which almost every word consists of a single morpheme. Analytic language uses specific grammatical words or particles rather than inflection to express synthetic relations within sentences. As we know in the previous session, inflection includes prefixes, suffixes, and infixes. Analytic language is also known as isolating language because they're composed of isolated or free morphemes. Free morphemes can be words on their own, such as cat or happy. Languages that are purely analytic in structure don't use any prefixes or suffixes ever. However, it is rare to find a language that is purely analytic or synthetic, since most languages have characteristics of both. Mandarin Chinese and Vietnamese are good examples of analytic language. English, on the other hand, is one of the most analytic Indo-European languages, but is still usually classified as a synthetic language. Here in the example, we have a Chinese sentence, 他不会用刀吃饭. Individually, they can translate to he no can use knife eat rice, but together, they mean he cannot eat rice with a knife. Here are several points that you should know about analytic language. First, words are monomorphic, invariable, and formed by a single root. Ideally, bound forms are completely missing. And position is the main way of expressing the relationship between each independent words. Next, relational meanings are not overtly expressed. The meaning and function of a word considerably depend upon the syntagmatic context. Third, there is little to no morphological complexity. Morphs are clearly identifiable both phonologically and semantically. Morph boundaries are sharply defined, phonological form is invariant, there are no instances of overlapping exponent. Derivation is non-existent and partly replaced by compounding. Fourth, the distinction in parts of speech is not clear. There is no overt expression of grammatical categorization. Fifth, tendency to monosyllabism with no phonetic distinctions between the elements expressing lexical meaning and the ones expressing relational meaning. Sixth and lastly, rigid word order. This means that certain sentences cannot have a random word order. It needs to be I eat rice instead of rice I eat or eat I rice.
Next material is agglutinative language. Agglutinative language is a form of synthetic language in which each affix typically represents one unit of meaning and bound morphemes are expressed by affixes. For instance, the ablative plural of the Turkish word house. The root if means house, the suffix ler marks the plural, and the suffix den marks the ablative case. In agglutinative language, affixes do not become fused with others and do not change form condition by others. In almost ideal case like Turkish, agglutinative language exhibit all of the following three properties. First, each morphemes express only one meaning element. Second, there is a clear-cut boundaries between each morpheme. Third, grammatical processes are expressed through prefixes or suffixes and do not affect the form of the individual morphemes. Turkish tends to be more or less one-to-one matching of morphemes with morph. For example, el means hand in singular, and im means my. If we put it together, it becomes ilm. That means my hand. And if we added de after ilm, it will become ilm de. That means in my hand. Next is agglutinative language Swahili. Swahili verb terms take prefixes to indicate the person of the subject of the verb and to indicate the tense of the verb. Okay, now let me show you some example. In Swahili, ni means I, un means you, an means she or he. Na means present tense, li means past tense, and ta means future tense. For instance, if you say Nina soma, ni means I, na means it present tense, and soma means read. So it means you say I am reading. And if you want to say you were reading, it means the ne part will change to un and the na part will change to li. It becomes uli soma. Li means past tense and un means you. And if you want to say future tenses, you just need to change the li part to ta and it means future tense. For example, uta soma. Un means you and ta means future tenses. And it means you will read. Okay, that's all about agglutinative language.
In conclusion, language or linguistic typology is largely aimed at cognitive and reliable socio-cultural aspects and defining the differences between languages, especially in the area of semantic differences. All languages are composed in a way that includes universal characteristics such as phonemes and double instances, while languages that are similar between each other have inherent features that allow different ways to learn about their related structures. The study of typology deals with ways in which languages differ from each other. When languages differ from each other, the variation is not random. but subject to limitations. It is not only concerned with variation, but also with the limitation on the degree of variation found in the languages of the world. That's all from our group's presentation. Thank you for all of your attention, and see ya. Have a good day.